We are now on patch 14.9 and here is all the best comps to play this patch to climb the ladder. But just before we're going into all the best comps, I just want to mention there is a tons of new artifacts that you can get in the game. And I just want to share the best ones. So as you can see here in the top of the ladder, there is the talisman, which goes on these bruiser or tank units. And else, other than that, kind of all the best is the one that we already know. And from here, we can go into something like Trenchcoat or something like Locket. But else, all the new ones is not performing that well at the moment. So these are the best artifacts for these units. Just so you know, go for what you know and also take Talisman every time you are getting it. And we are starting out with Porcelain Ashe. And this is the comp where you want to have 4 in Porcelain as fast as possible. And you also want to have 4 in Invokers. If you're getting an emblem, you will definitely take that, since you can get to 4 in the trait way faster. And even before you are hitting Lysandra. And that means you can just go level 8 and hit 3 out of the 4 units and have 4 in the trait. The game plan is to get to level 8 as fast as possible. You usually do that at 4-1 or 4-2. Play the early game with as much gold as possible. Try to avoid lose too much health. And then just go level 8 and hit this board. As soon as you're stable at level 8, you will go for level 9 and put in the last unit, which usually is a seer. When it comes to items, you will prioritize Ashe first, then Annie, then Lilia, and then Nautilus. It is depending on what item you are hitting, but Ashe is your first one, but you do also need a strong frontline to make it work, since she is scaling up. Attack speed and crit items is her best. You could also go for something like a Deathblade, you could also go for a Gunblade, and you could even go for something like Giant Slayer. Lilia will just take all the mana and AP items, and Annie and Nautilus will just go for tank items. You can just go for straight up as strong tank items as possible. That means these items and even something like Claw or Bramble Vest is fine as well. Next up we have Kaisa with Trickshot and Bruiser, and this is the classic comp that we already know. We are going for 4 in Bruisers, 4 in Trickshots, and are we getting an Ink Shadow item that works on Kaisa, we will put it on her, and if we have a tank one, we could put it on Galio or even Silas. So the main thing is, just again, it's a fast 8, so it means you have to go to level 8 at stage 4-1 or 4-2. And from here, you just want to put in Kaisa items on her. You could use something like Teemu as an item holder for the early game, and then you're just going to pivot the item over. In the front line, we want Galio and Silas. Galio needs pure tank items, meanwhile Silas can go for tank or bruiser items. I think these are his bis. Doing 2, he is quite tanky. He's healing up a lot, and he does also do quite a lot of damage, so a spark is quite good on him. When it comes to augments, Lucky is the best one, since it is just exactly what we need when we're playing Trickshot. Grab back for more items or little bodies for having a boost on our 4 and 5 cost units. When it comes to Ink Shadow items, this is probably the best one for the front line. And if you want to go for Kaisa items, you will go for Toxin. Next up, we have Dragonlord Galio. And this is the comp where we want to get to fast level 9. That means we are going to play a little bit as a fast level 8. That means get to level 8 at stage 4-1 or 4-2. Try to hit as many units of this board as possible. And if you can play around Diana with Dragonlord and Allfrost in the early game. You could also put in as many heavily units in the early game to stabilize your board. But else what you want to play around is Janna, Diana, Riven, Soraka, and whoever can hold the items for your backline carry. When it comes to augments, we want to have anything that have anything to do with Sage or Dragonlord, and that means a specific one or a crest is really good. Put tank items on Diana and Galio, and put attack damage and attack speed items on Aurelia in the backline, and she will do all the work. Just to give you a quick example how you could play it, you could play around Story Weaver and Warden in the early game, and whenever you can add in something like Zoe, and from here you could either add in one more Story Weaver if you have the chance. That will be Riven in this situation, or you could also play around Diana and Soraka, so your board looks a little bit like this instead. So you're having these 7 units. But again, as I said before, put in a Story Weaver if you can. So you're going to play 5 of those. And then you are just going to the fast level 8 when you're hitting 4-2 or 4-1. And then you're just going to try to pivot into this as much as possible. That also means items on Severe could be an option in the early game, and tank items could go on Jax or Gary in the early game. But hopefully you can get a Galio at 4-2, so you can pivot into this board where you're pulling the items over from Jax, for example, and having Galio as the main tank instead. And as soon as you're stable, get to level 9 as fast as possible and put in the main carries. Next up, we have 7 Fated. And once again, 7 Fated is a comp that you can easily play. It is all about getting 7 in Fated. And I will get in an Implim. We can do that before we're hitting set, which is really, really good. That means we can get to level 7 and play this board. So basically we just want to reroll at level 7 and try to hit the 2 units to 3-star. We could also play around Syndra if we are not really hitting any of these units. It is definitely worth it if you can get him to 3-star, but if you can't or you don't see yourself doing it this game, play around Syndra instead and push levels. An Emblem is super good and especially a go for you to play the comp. If I don't get an Emblem, I'll probably try to play something else instead. As soon as you're getting one of the guys to 3-star or see yourself pushing levels, you will do that and put in set as soon as possible. Items will be attack speed and 80 items on Aphelios, mana and AP on Syndra. Tank items will go on Fresh and bruiser items on Set. If we don't have Set in the early game, we can just put in whatever that fits the board that can hold his items. Next up, we have Heavenly with Kayn. And Heavenly is still really, really good. It is a fast level 8 comp. So once again, you want to go to level 8, states 4-1 or 4-2. You want to play as many Heavenly units as possible. And you want to play around Kayn, Lee, and Morgana as the main carries. So what you want to do is to have Kayn itemized first if possible. You will go for something like Bloodthirster, Edge of Night, or Last Whisper. You could also use something like Titans, and you could also use Hand of Justice, a healing item, and just damage item, or even a reset item like Edge of Night is really, really good. Lee Sin will go for similar items, but more in the tanky bruiser way, so Titans and Bloodthirster is his best items. Morgana just want a Sojourn and Amarillo for sniping backlines and putting on the burn effect, so we are doing wounds, so they're not healing. When it comes for augments, Not Today is probably one of the best ones, and then you could just play around Heavenly. Before we're hitting Morgana, you could just put the items on Soraka instead, and before we are hitting these guys, you can just play whatever. But units that are fitting this quite well could be Yone for Kayn or Lee Sin items. And you could also play something like Kindred to hold Morgana items instead. That means you will have 2 Reapers just by playing these. And as soon as you're just getting one of the others, you can just pivot over to your carries and just remove them from the game. If you get to level 9 or you are hitting Wukong, you will put him in. And before we're hitting like all the Heavenly units, you will also play the other last unit, which is Malphite. Next up, we have Duelist. Duelist is back, and what you're looking for here is to play around Volibear, Lee Sin, and Tristana. And in the late game, you have Aurelia as well. If you're getting an Implim, this is the board that you want to look for. You want to go for 8, and you want to have Volibear or Lee Sin itemized so we can scale up. From here, you will put items on Tristana, and you will prioritize Volibear over Tristana. But if you are getting items for her first, you will put items on her. Lee Sin is low-key a carry for this comp, and from here, Volibear and Tristana is the secondary, and then Aurelia. It's not because Aurelia is worse than the others, they are just gonna do more impact overall in the game. So a crest is really good, and buffing up Titans is also really good since Volibear and Lee Sin is using that item. And you can also go for the specific one that are buffing up Duelists. We already know Lee Sin's items from the other comps, and similar will go on Volibear, a healing item, and bruiser items. Attack damage on Tristana, and attack speed and attack damage on Aurelia. Next up, we have Syndra with Arcanist. And here we just want to go for as many Arcanist units as possible. We are in the situation where we also want to play around Porcelain because it is a super strong trait. So that means we are looking for 4 in that trait. And if we're having an emblem that makes us able to get 4 in the trait before we're getting the Syndra, we will use that. That means we can have 4 in the Porcelain and 6 in Arcanist without playing Lysandra. That also means we can make sure that we are at level 8, are stable with 2-star frontline and 2-star backline, and then we can go and push levels and add in Lysandra. On the other hand, if we're not getting that emblem, we could go for the Arcanist one that makes us able to get 8 in the trait. When it comes to items, we want to prioritize having a strong frontline, but we do also want to have a blue buff and an AP item on Syndra. And if we're not having an emblem, we will just play another AP item as well. Lux is quite a good unit, especially in the early game. So you can use the Shift on her for anti-magic resist. You should also go for Spear of Zodian for sniping often. And also a Nash Tooth for doing even more damage and even more sniping and stunning. And the last comp for this patch is Alune and Yone Reroll. So this is the full board. And what we are looking for is Umbral units. And that means we are more or less just playing all of them. And that also means that we are going for the specific ones when it comes to augments. There is also something about Midnight that I will mention in a bit. But basically you just want to go to level 7 and try to play as many of these units as you can. That also means that Zed and Azir is probably not something that you're going to play in the early game. So these 7 units is what you are looking for. When you get to level 7, you try to do a stabilized rolling. So you're getting all of your 1, 2, and 3 cost units to 2-star at least. And if you're hitting a Silas, an Ornn, or a Kayn, you will put that in as well. You will do all the rerolling above 50 gold, and every time you're getting more gold than 50, you will do a roll to hit these units. Alune is the main carry, and secondary will be Yone. Both of them can be the main carries, but in most situations where we are consistent with Yone, Alune will be the main carry. Silas is super good and wants similar items as we have seen before, and the same thing goes with Kayn. Now in the situation where we are playing Midnight, we will try to get Yorick to 3-star and itemize him. Yorick items will just be classic tank items, so you can go from everything like Bramble Vest, Stoneplate, Heart, Redemption, or anything else that are buffing him up and making him more tanky. As soon as you're getting your main carries to 3-star, you will go up in level and start adding in the 2 other units. That was all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next guide.